There was some point where I must have gotten a little out of line. Maybe they hadn't given me enough meds. They put me in like a confinement room. And I got all upset and I demanded to see the art therapist because I knew that she would be able to speak for me and on my behalf. Early in this pandemic, someone sent us, a friend sent an email, and I can't remember who wrote this piece, but the piece was about artists being first responders in this time. That we, musicians, artists of every sort, poets, are first responders in this time, not only of the pandemic, but even the social crises that are happening in this day and time. That we are first responders because what people need is beyond words, and music and art is beyond words. It skips right past the head and goes to the heart. And it really, the crisis in our country is a crisis of soul and spirit. And so I think artists are really called upon during this time.
You're listening to Sound Mind, where queer voices across Minnesota explore mental health through art. I'm Jane Ramsire Miller, Artistic Director of One Voice Mixed Chorus, Minnesota's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and straight allies chorus. We acknowledge that Sound Mind is produced and our singers reside on the sacred traditional lands of the Dakota and Anishinaabe people. In this episode, I talk with Sara Thomsen and Paula Pedersen. Sara is a singer-songwriter who performs across the Midwest and beyond. She founded and serves as the artistic director of Duluth's Echoes of Peace Choir, dubbed one of northern Minnesota's best-kept secrets. Sara lives on a small farm with gardens and chickens and her wife, Paula Pedersen. Paula says she serves as Sara's backup singer, and she's trying to figure out retirement life during a pandemic. This episode was recorded in fall 2021 in the middle of the COVID pandemic, so Sara, Paula, and their dog Hannah and I are outside, including all the noises of my urban neighborhood.
I am Sara Thomsen, and very happy to be here. I'm a musician from northern Minnesota, Twin Ports area, and here with my beloved spouse that I'll let you introduce yourself.
My name is Paula Pedersen, and I'm Sara's backup singer. Yeah, and spouse. We live on a little farmy.
Kind of a farmish.
Homesteadish.
Big garden.
Big garden in the Lake Superior watershed. So outside of the Twin Ports, Duluth Superior.
What's growing right now is still things in our garden, even though it's late fall. Some of the greens, and since we have a greenhouse this year, a lot of tomatoes and peppers still going in the greenhouse, which is very exciting because we're very far north, so to have stuff still growing. And we also have this native plant field that we put in about 3 years ago. That was just gorgeous this year. So for me, just sitting on a bench near that wildflower field is one of my favorite places to be, under a big maple that has her branches cover me. Mm-hmm. So that's one of my favorite places.
Yeah. And I grew up on a farm in Iowa and have learned to appreciate flowers, but growing up, it was about what was you could eat or sell or, So I think more about the produce, and I can it, and so every day is what do I have enough of to do some small batch canning, and we try to eat from our pantry before we go anywhere else. It's just in me. I grew up with my grandparents and extended family doing that at the farm, and I hated it as a child. I'll never do this. This is stupid. Here I am.
I mean, Paula was a squirrel in a former life, we think.
Was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's the person to be with during a pandemic. I mean, we really have been grateful for the garden and just your know-how of
Yeah.
putting up food. So
Yeah. And all of a sudden it's valued in a way that is kind of fun to see. Although I couldn't get canning lids, all of a sudden it's popular, and I'm like, what the heck? Some of us have been doing this for a while. What are you doing with all the canning lids?
we have a small flock of chickens for laying hens, Icelandic heritage hens, and as well as Hannah, who's here with us today, our four-legged dog, and we have a cat. And do we have any other animals? Oh, bees. Paula is a beekeeper.
I'm a hobby beekeeper. So right now we have 2 hives that are alive. That varies from 0 to 4, depending on what's happening.
0 to 4 hives.
Correct.
Yeah.
Not bees.
Not bees.
Yeah. That'd be tragic.
Not generate much honey.
Right.
I grew up in the city of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So my mother was an avid flower gardener, and both my mom and dad also did a little bit of vegetables as well. So I did grow up with growing things. And then I had a great aunt who had a farm out in the country that we would spend a week maybe in the summer and on the farm. So Paula claims to have more farming experience than me because I only had a week at a time, a week every summer. But we both grew up with a love of growing food, and for me also growing flowers. So my mother flowers and eating went together. We would always have a big bouquet of flowers at the table, whether it's special events or just, every day it's dinner. So it was part of eating, was having flowers. Music was a part of growing up early on. Like my earliest memories I often share are of my dad singing lullabies to me. In fact, I would remember sort of whimpering in bed so that my dad would scoop me up and take me into the rocking chair and sing me to sleep. So he loved to sing, and in fact, my dad, who died this past spring, one of the things I remember him always asking in the morning was, "What song did you wake up with today? What song did you wake up with today?" So I think about, like, song was present for him throughout his life as just something that's always with you. And I think he brought that to all of us. I have three sisters, 1 younger and 2 older, and we would sing together around the piano. We all had piano lessons. We all sang in choir, even played in bell choir at my church growing up, and sang in the choruses at school. Took a guitar elective 1 year in junior high, and so music was always a part. But actually, when I was younger, my dad not only was musical, but also like he could draw, and the whole visual art piece was there. He was more like he was a structural engineer, so it was more that kind of technical drawing, but he could do sketching as well. And I think that also got nurtured in me, or it did, growing up. And I always thought I would become a visual artist. And that's even into college. I was minoring in art, and music was just a side, something we did. But yeah, so, and then it became more of my work, kind of post college, and now I have been thinking about the visual art piece, moving back toward doing some of that, especially now that all my music gigs are a little different now with the pandemic.
Yeah.
So
but in a non-pandemic year, you're pretty much working almost full-time as singer, songwriter, performer, going around everywhere.
Yeah, I would say,
which is really remarkable, actually.
Doing that full-time, and as well as the part-time doing the Echoes of Peace Community Choir in Duluth, Minnesota, which is a non-audition community choir that's been also just a regular part of my music work. But singer, songwriter, performing, and all that is my full-time job that I love it, and it's shifted a little bit now.
Not only does Paula share a musical background with Sara, but music is also what brought them together.
I remember being in choirs, probably, I grew up the Scandinavian Lutheran farm, so singing in church, singing in school. And then in high school, what really I got into was we had a swing choir. And that was in the 80s, the early 80s. And we had a swing choir, and I loved swing choir. And we traveled around and, competed and did all that in swing choir. And so that was really what I loved.
Okay, can I ask you, because
Sure.
you're sitting here in a flannel shirt
Yes.
and very lesbian clothing.
Yes.
In the swing choir, did you wear those dresses?
Oh, yes,
And
a
then
skirt
the
and
boys
heels.
And the heels.
With the little bow tie.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I had a Farrah Fawcett haircut for those.
That's
That was
beautiful.
very...
Talk about gender roles right there.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
But growing even younger than that on the farm, I was a closeted Barbra Streisand fan.
Oh,
I loved Barbra Streisand.
why
But
did you have to be closeted?
Well, because she wasn't cool among my age cohort. So
Didn't you have to hide Barbra Streisand? And then
I
what,
did. I
What
had
did you
to-
pull out instead?
Billy Joel Glass
Okay.
Houses.
Yeah.
So I would drive
Oh.
to school because I was on the farm, and I would pick up some friends on the way, and I'd be blasting Barbara until I got to their house, and then I'd put her in the glove box and put in Billy Joel.
Wow.
Yeah. But I would use my hairbrush and as a microphone, and I wanted to be her in the worst way. So I still love her.
Love it.
Yeah, she's like butter. Yeah,
Like butter?
like butter. Oh, but then I went to Luther College in Decorah, Iowa, and sang with Weston Noble and the Nordic Choir, and that was a very peak experience for me.
Yeah, that's a legacy.
Yeah,
Talk about
he was.
choral legacy for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, I think it's kind of fun. The way we met was Paula was looking for a backup guitar player for a song she was going to sing for the local women's coffee house, and a mutual friend said, "Oh, give Sara a call." So
She said, I
I
have a
really
friend who
was
plays
her
the guitar."
backup. We started with I was her backup. Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't know who Sara Thomsen was, nor that this was her profession. I just called her and said, "I hear you play guitar. I need someone to play guitar for me." Gracious Sara Thomsen said, "Sure." And then as we were practicing, she started singing some harmonies. And I said,
Nice.
"Oh, that's really good. Yeah, do that." Still, I didn't know. That wasn't my kind of music. So
Right.
I wasn't listening to her. Now I am.
Every day.
Every day. But then we had a mutual friend that we knew separate from each other, the rabbi in town. There was only one. Also a lesbian singer. And the three of us got together and started singing 3-part harmony, and then created a group called Three Altos, and that's been really fun to sing that way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen the documentary 20 Feet from Stardom?
Yes.
That helped me. It is a skill. It's
It
like
is a
mountain
skill.
biking. You have to pay attention and follow, and I feel like I love that. I actually love watching Sara and singing, following carefully and singing. And someone said once, "Oh, you look at her so adoringly." It's like, no, I'm trying to follow her. Yes, it's adoringly, but I'm not looking at her, and it's really about, I have to watch.
I've been conducting choirs for 3.5 decades, and every few years someone would say, "Have you met Sara Thomsen? She's got this choir in Duluth." Or, "You need to meet Sara. You program such similar concerts." Sara, Sara, Sara. Apparently, she was getting the same nudges as I was. In 2018, we were both part of an Indigenous-led water walk with Ojibwe elder Sharon Day walking the length of the Wisconsin River, and we finally met for real. Turns out, we have a lot in common. One of those commonalities is a shared commitment toward creating music that inspires action for social change. I asked Sara to share a bit about that journey.
I have to give a nod to just musicians that I listen to. That is kind of how I learned, wow, you can like name things through song, like the Pete Seegers and Woody Guthrie and Mercedes Sosa and Odetta and all the folk and musical troubadours who I was like, wow, music can be used in this way. So the most relevant one maybe right now is a song I wrote that's really based on our rural life as well as the national politics that we're facing right now, and that was Too Many Roosters in the White House.
Too many roosters in the White House.
Cocks crow, feathers of
Fluff. All the hens have had enough.
bare-necked, feathers pecked, her hope erect, blood specked. What the cluck, cluck we gonna do?
Organize a chicken coup.
Flock together, eyes on the prize. Flap, fly, up, rise. We know exactly what to do. We are many, they are few. We gotta feather up and get down. Run the roosters out of town. What the cluck, cluck we gonna do? Organize a chicken coup. Too many foxes in the hen house.
Mm-hmm.
Dressed up suit and sly, sneaky grins, flashy tie. Steal the eggs, cut off the legs, rights in rags, truth in gags. What the cluck, cluck we gonna do? Organize a chicken coup. Flock together, eyes on the prize. Flap, fly, up, rise. We know exactly what to do. We are many, they are few. We gotta feather up and get down. Run the roosters out of town. What the cluck, cluck we gonna do? Organize a chicken coup.
Inspired by the chickens and our place.
Yeah, I mean they were. Paula called me
In tears.
in tears because we had the little babies that were so cute in the spring had grown up to be,
No, in the fall.
or in
Yeah.
whatever time of year it was. All of a sudden we had too many roosters in our flock, and
And
they were
spring.
beaten up
Yeah.
on the hens. It was spring, and they were beaten up on the hens.
Yeah.
Right.
When you kind of let them out of the coop and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, we had like 7 hens and 6 roosters, and it was brutal. I think the other powerful one that you wrote right after the election, which was a way of communicating with your family, was, where did Jesus go?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And using the metaphors and realities of Jesus being a brown skin, Middle Eastern immigrant, or or migrant anyway, and that to make a point.
Tell me where did Jesus go? That brown-skinned man walking the road to Jericho. Tell me where did Jesus go? He's up and been deported to Mexico. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. What you gonna do? Hallelujah. I'm gonna stand by you. Love is all you got. Love is all you do. It's bigger than me, and it's bigger than you. Hallelujah. Tell me where is Jesus now? that Middle Eastern man who could feed a hungry crowd. Tell me where is Jesus now? He's on a list of terrorists and they tossed him out of town. Hallelujah. What you gonna do? Hallelujah. I'm gonna stand by you. Love is all you got. Love is all you do. It's bigger than me and it's bigger than you. Tell me where, oh, if you know, do tell. That wise guy wasting time with the woman at the well. Tell me where, oh, if you know, do tell. They say he's queer and out of here and going straight to hell. Hallelujah. I'll be there too. I'll be there with you. Hallelujah. What you gonna do? Hallelujah. I'm gonna stand by you. Love is all you got. Love is all you do. It's bigger than me and it's bigger than you. Tell me where, oh, where I search and I search for that storytelling man. I can't find him in the church. He walked out the door, took off his sandals and shook off all the dirt. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. What you gonna do? Hallelujah. I'm gonna stand by you. Love is all you got. Love is all you do. It's bigger than me and it's bigger than you. Hallelujah. What you gonna do? Hallelujah. I'm gonna stand by you. Love is all you got. Love is all you do. It's bigger than me and it's bigger than you. Hallelujah.
I asked Sara and Paula to talk about when they each came out, and they both paused. We had this moment of recognition that coming out is not simple for anyone. Often it happens in phases over many years.
You did it before I did, so.
Well, I'm trying to think because there's all, it happens in all different contexts at different places along the way. First you come out to your little sister. That's what my, and then you come, So for me, it took a while in terms of coming out to the people nearest and dearest to me, except for, this before referenced little sister who I was the first one to share with because I knew it would, not be a big deal. So the first number of years, that was not easy in terms of sharing that with the rest of my family. But in terms of where I was living and where we live now, it has not been very hard to be out in the community that we live in. And it's been so many years ago since coming out. Like now, I wouldn't say it's a non-issue with all members of my family, but there's definitely a love and acceptance. For sure, they love Paula, and so we have that peace. There's a lot of peace that's come with the whole family issue that took a while though.
Yeah, so my story, so I was at teaching faculty at the University of Minnesota Duluth from the time I got out of college and grad school. And so that's what brought me up to the area. And I was married to a man. And my high school sweetheart, although we weren't in the same high school, he was from the area in northern Minnesota. Different story about how we met, but we dated long distance 6.5 years. I was 15, he was 17. And it really was a beautiful thing for who I was in that part of my life. And so for me, my coming out was very gradual and very intellectualized, I would say. I studied, I taught human sexuality. I had to learn a lot to teach. And I remember the moment, even in my marriage, telling my then spouse, yeah, I'm probably bisexual. Like, this makes sense to me. And, so if you die, I'll probably check out, I mean, it was just this intellectual exercise for me. And at a point when our marriage stopped working for me, that's where I went. So I explored my sexuality and realized that this is a bigger part of me than I realized. And so we split up. It was very hard on him, understandably. And and yet I was at the university in a very liberal environment, in the psychology department and teaching human sexuality and gender. And so it just felt like not that big a deal. To me in a lot of ways, except for my family. And so I did lose family for a period of time, and we've gotten each other back, but it was as much about leaving that what then was a 20-year relationship, that I was being selfish, and he was and is a wonderful human being, so it was very hard for people to understand why that wasn't enough. How to explain to family who I believe had the ethic of, you just bear it out. It doesn't, no matter what. And for me to say, I just think there's something more that I want to explore, that was really not a good answer. Well, I use the term ambisexual, which I found in some original Kinsey work because of my academic work.
Alfred Kinsey was an American biologist who had a huge impact on how we think about human sexuality. Way back in 1947, he founded the Institute for Sex Research at Indiana University. So you may have heard of his Kinsey scale. It's one of the oldest and most widely used scales describing sexual orientation. Kinsey's research was based on thousands of interviews with people about their sexual histories and behaviors. It's now outdated, but the Kinsey scale was groundbreaking at the time. It was one of the first models to suggest that sexuality isn't a binary where people are exclusively heterosexual or exclusively homosexual. Instead, the Kinsey scale acknowledges that sexual attraction for many people falls somewhere in the middle of those two binaries. Kinsey's work continues to spark controversy as our understanding of human sexuality continues to expand. But it can't be denied that Kinsey had a great influence on broadening the way people think about sexual orientation and attraction, even today.
What I loved about ambisexual was this fluidity throughout the lifespan, that he really believed that it's not a static thing. And it was like, wow, that really resonated for me, because I loved I'm not saying his name I loved him, and that's who I was at the time. That's not who I am now. And so even when Sara and I said our vows, I had to say, I did this once, and I said till death do us part, and I meant it. I can't say, oh, this is who I was all along, but it just makes sense to me, is that how do we know who we're going to be 20 years from now? But I know that's not everyone's sexuality story. So it's kind of it's even actually hard to talk about within the LGBT community, because it sounds not right, or like
selfish.
it could
There's that word again,
selfish,
right?
or that it could undermine, like it's a choice. Well, it's a
Yeah,
choice
yeah.
for me to decide if I'm going to honor who I am, which I'm grateful I did in 2000, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, was to honor. Speaking of mental health, that was when I became healthy. It was when I honored who I was becoming, maybe more than who I was all along. I mean, so that's, people could argue with and about that, but that's my story. And I would say it's only been recently, where we live now in a very rural environment, where that was 2000. So what
Right.
is it now? It was 22 years ago. I came out in 2000. So it's been a long time, but I'm no longer in that kind of liberal cocooned environment. And when we have like service people come out who I'm just not sure about, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling some, I don't know if it's fear, internalized homophobia, or what, but just a caution that I never felt before. And that's unfortunate. I feel that's unfortunate. Our neighbors that we have relationships with are great. It's the unknown folks that, come to look at this tree that needs to cut down and just try to pick up on the energy, and maybe the other one will stay in the house depending on how it seems. So yeah, that's the other side.
Yeah, I can share a story of for me, and this was a time pretty early on, post college, living with friends, actually in New York City. This was before I moved to Minnesota. But I kind of had a what might have been called as a mental health breakdown, or at least a crisis of the spirit, that I ended up, in the psych ward and put on meds and the whole thing. What I remember during that time, it was probably 11 days that I spent. They actually had like an art therapist, a dance therapist, and I can't remember for sure art and dance. I don't remember there being music, but there was music as part of the dance therapy. That had a huge impact on me, and I still think some of the struggles I was going through had to do with working through acceptance and non-acceptance. And I would say it was in terms of coming out, as well as some struggles with the church at that time that I was more connected with. And it was a crisis of difference on a lot of levels. It was family, it was faith, it was even within this group of friends, like a feelings of betrayal, on a number of levels. So it ended up with a crisis. And yet coming out of that, and during that time, the arts really, the fact that there were those art therapists in that space at that time saved me. And I think ever since that time, I realized that it needed to no longer be a side thing for me, like the arts. That the arts was not a fringe part of my life, but like the bread and butter. But it was my vocation or my calling for my own mental health. Like I needed to be coming out as an artist, really. I think the arts helped me heal and continue to. Like if I don't have that in my life, it's a piece of my health.
I'm a psychologist, a licensed psychologist. I'm trained very traditionally. I did therapy for years before and while I was teaching. And Sara has taught me so much outside of the box of, not only what you just described as what was most helpful and therapeutic to you, but how we might even define mental health or mental non-health or mental illness is so I become I became a critic of my own discipline. The more that I kind of opened myself up to Sara and Sara's world and Sara's way of being, which, I mean, artists think and do the world differently. Yep. And I think, I love just that notion that if Sara and people like Sara can't express their art, they're not healthy and whole. And that's a powerful lesson for all of us who do mental health work to be in touch with. And it's probably with anything, but particularly artists. I think we tend to kind of label, or can label you as in ways that aren't necessarily always helpful.
And why don't we do that same naming of, really, there's systems that are mentally unhealthy, or we don't name here this, and thinking of things like systemic racism, that is mental unhealth.
I got snippets of that taking courses in what was then women's studies. Now it's women, gender, and sexuality studies, or now queer studies, or like that kind of just even queering up our thinking, which was not part of traditional psychology at the time. But it's an advertisement too for a liberal arts education, that's for sure. And cross-disciplinary ways of knowing. Yeah.
Since Sara and I met in 2018, we have managed to find many ways to collaborate together. One of them is as co-writers and creators of a concert that One Voice will premiere in September 2021 called Remembering Singing Water. The concert combines music and true stories of Indigenous people, immigrants, and queer folks. Their experiences of Minnesota as a place of both homecoming and of exile. Because of the pandemic, the music for Remembering was recorded virtually this winter. Literally, our singers recorded their own voices on their own phones at home, including Sara, and then all of those voices were edited together. Just last weekend, we gathered outside to film the songs and stories which you, our listeners, are going to be able to experience as a film this fall. We're going to give you a sneak preview of one of the songs we recorded. This is Sara's Water is Life, Many Roosters.
The origin of that song was at Standing Rock in North Dakota, when the Lakota and Dakota took a stand against the Dakota Access Pipeline that was going to be built across the Missouri River right north of the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. And so the Standing Rock Nation stood up, and then all the other Lakota and Dakota peoples came together, as well as Indigenous and non-Indigenous folks from across not only our country but the world to address that issue. And so I went for just a small bit of time during that, and that song was kind of born from being there at the camp. And Many Roosters, which is Water's Life in Lakota and Dakota, was and continues to be a call for protecting the waters. And I began sharing it with my choir, and there was actually a Lakota and Ojibwe man that came up to me after one of the practices. Sorry.
The neighbors are working on their motorcycle.
Yes. And said, kind of offered, or said, what about adding this part, which was the Madakuye Yasin, the all my relations, we are all related part to the chorus. So it's a song that evolved over time, and then we sang it on the Missouri River Water Walk, led by Sharon Day in 2017. And Sharon added the part, the way-o part that we sang during that walk. There's a choir that sang it in Singing for Water in London. There's news that will travel to me of it, being sung in various places around the world. It's a song for the water, for the protection of rivers, lakes, streams everywhere, but it began at Standing Rock. All my relations come, every nation come, all my relations under the sun, we are one. We are praying, come. We are praying, come. We are the song and we are the drum. We are one. We are the river, come. We are the river, come. We are the boat, the paddle, the shore. We are one. Many Wachoni say, many Wachoni say, many Wachoni water is life for everything. We are the water, say, we are the water, say, we are the water, we are where all life begins. We are the ancient ones. We are the ancient ones. In your breath and bones we sing on. We are one. We are the meadow, come. We are the meadow, come. We are the lark that sings, the new day has begun. We are the new day, run, run, run. We are the new day, run, run, run. We are the old and we are the young. We are one. Many Wachoni say, many Wachoni say, many Wachoni water is life for everything. We are the water, say, we are the water, say, we are the water, we are where all life begins. We are the earth and sky, we are the thunder cries, we are the fire, we are the light in your eyes. We are standing strong, like a rock, like a stone, on the sacred ground we belong. We are home. Many Wachoni sing, many Wachoni sing, many Wachoni waters light for everything. We are the water, sing. We are the water, sing. We are the water, we are where all life begins. Way, oh, way, oh, way, ah. Way, oh, way, oh, way, ah. Way, oh, way, oh, way, ah. Way, oh, way, way, oh, way. Way, oh, way, oh, way, ah. Way, oh, way, oh, way, ah. Way, oh, way, oh, way, ah. Way, oh, way. All my relations come, every nation come. All my relations under the sun, we are one. This week, just in our personal life, we had a dear friend who we thought would be with us longer and got got the call that, she might be gone in the next 24 hours. And we hopped in our car and went to sing at her bedside, and music is one of those things that can help us be present to someone as they're leaving this world. So that happened this week. And a few days after that, we showed up at another friend's house who happens to be the mayor of Duluth, but showed up to sing for her because a week prior, there had been a parading up and down her street with a lot of, I would say, hateful rhetoric spewing from the vehicles that passed up and down for 30 minutes.
A truck parade.
A truck parade.
Last September, President Donald Trump held a rally in Duluth before the November election. Over 2,500 Trump supporters showed up, which was well over the 250-person limit agreed upon by the campaign. You might remember there was a COVID pandemic in full swing at the time. So, Democratic Duluth Mayor Emily Larson spoke out condemning the rally, and that prompted a parade of Trump supporters to circle her Duluth home in trucks, playing loud music, flying Trump flags, blocking traffic, and yelling hateful messages at Mayor Emily.
And, we were like, how could we show up unexpected, but to bring a positive something to, and so we showed up and sang a song for
on her porch,
for Emily on her porch, So, but how can music and the arts shift the energy? It can transform negative energy and just shift things in a moment and make us be able to take a breath. What were you going to say?
I was going to say yeast.
Like yeast.
I see it like some of that as being yeast for something, for transformation. But the starter.
Yeah.
I don't.
Music
Actually,
is like sourdough starter.
There you go. I'm hearing a song coming, and it's called "For Emily on Her Porch."
Ooh. Are you writing it?
No. That was your prompt, Sarah. Because really that story of what happened in Duluth last week is it's just another important story to be told.
Yep.
Yeah.
Indeed, Sara tells me she has written at least 70 songs in her lifetime. There's a link to Sara's website on the Sound Mind page, so check out more of her music, buy a CD, and support Sara and other first responder musicians. We're going to close with an excerpt of a song on Sara's most recent CD that seems pretty perfect for the world we're living in right now. Thank you, Sara and Paula, for the music, wisdom, and inspiration toward action that sprouts from your rural home alongside your flowers and vegetables.
I what to sing about in these days. What rhyme or melody turn a phrase? What is your story now? Where is your gaze? I what to sing about in these days. Towers are tumbling, tumbling down. Fortresses fumbling, crumbling crowns. Governments grumbling as they drown. Towers are tumbling, tumbling down. Plant your song like a seed. Hold your heart like a prayer beat. Give your breath like a tree. set your souls deep, love free. I know a woman who walks and prays.
This concludes episode 5 of Sound Mind from One Voice Mixed Chorus, Minnesota's LGBTQ and Straight Allies Chorus. If you want to support this podcast, there is a One Voice donation button at the bottom of the Sound Mind webpage. All gifts are graciously welcomed. This podcast is made possible by the voters of Minnesota through the Minnesota State Arts Board, thanks to a legislative appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Yay, Minnesota voters! Thank you to audio engineer, playwright, and all-around smart tech person, Paul Cruz. Join us for the next and final, for now, Sound Mind episode. I'll be talking with actor, dancer, singer, Renaissance woman, Kimani Khalil, who lives in Crystal, Minnesota. Kimani weaves a darn good story and has an infectious laugh that will keep you smiling the rest of the day.
Like a prayer beat, give your breath like a tree, set your souls deep, love free. There is a garden that grows at night, then in the winter it tucks in tight, drifts off in dreams about birds in flight that carry the seeds of this garden's life. I what to sing about in these days, what rhyme or melody turn a phrase? What is your story now? Where is your gaze? I what to sing about